biodiversity in church shop. So we did all of them, and then there was some dissenters that belonged into next door. How is this feature biodiversity? It's just a great big standing playground. Somebody else contributed it to the is the person responsible for making those decisions? I asked something and it's not there's no attendees,
Oh. Well, that's kind of nice, but feels a shame. But 461 people looked at...
Hello? Hello? Should we get going? Hello? Right, it's gone 7 o'clock, so let's get started. Thanks for joining us tonight. This is a meeting of Froome Council's Council Matters Committee. I'm Mark Dorrington, I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. Remind everyone we have people here and in the room. For those in the room, housekeeping, emergency exit at the rear corner of the room, the assembly points on the far side of the car park, toilets at the end of the corridor, accessible toilet to the right of the lift through that door there. Tea, drinks, water, whatever. Tonight, Paul will clerk, Laura will manage the slides and take the minutes, Sarah and Rachel will manage the questions board, participant settings, and the IT generally, with help from Harry. Becky will be tweeting. The meeting will be recorded, and we are live streaming on our YouTube channel. If there are any councillors attending via Zoom, please use the yellow hand. And anybody else attending on Zoom, please ask questions through the Q&A board. Thank you. That's the housekeeping out of the way. Apologies for absence, Paul.
Yep. John Nelson, Lizzie Boyle and Maxine Crawley.
Okay. As has become commonplace, we have to propose and accept those. So we have Anne proposing and we have Nick Dove seconding and voting.
That looks to be unanimous.
Thank you. Moving on, we need to approve the minutes of the last meeting, which was on the 9th of February. For those people who were present, hopefully you've all had sight of these. Are there any matters arising from those minutes? No, very good. So can we propose that we accept those minutes? Andy Palmer, seconded by Rich.
That's unanimous again.
Fantastic. Yes, does anybody want to declare an interest in any of the items that are arising tonight? No, good. Questions and comments from the public and councillors. As you're the only member of the public here, Andy, you better have a go.
Not quite. I can see Mel's across the room there as well.
Oh.
So, yeah, Andy Jones, currently a member of the public. I just wanted to recognise that as this is the last formal session of this council before tomorrow's election, there's a number of the councillors who are standing down, having given great service through difficult years of lockdown and so on, and I want to record our thanks to those people.
I'm sure that's much appreciated, Andy. Thank you very much. You've been here as many meetings as the rest of us, so you will have seen what's gone on the last 3 years, so it's appreciated. Thank you. And I didn't put you up to it. First item on the agenda is an update on what's been happening in this town hall, and that's over to Rachel for that.
Yeah, hello everybody. Rachel Griffin, Marketing Communication Manager. So in the town hall since February, we've had no change of tenants. So we still have Fairfrome in the Elliott building, Froome FM upstairs, Froome Learning Partnership in the 2 small offices and down in the parlour, and Active and In Touch just down the hallway in meeting room 5. We have seen a return to the town hall, however, with a really large number of weekly and monthly bookings. And room 4, which is one of the old room Y rooms, is performing really, really well as a bookable space. So currently we have Froome Community Education here. 4 times a week for 4 10-week courses. We've got Mendip Family Time in 3 times a week. We've got CTEC, who are a training company who deliver training to carers. Young Somerset, Mind and the Probation Service, they are all now booked in on a weekly basis, so they're really good regular bookings. We have had an instance of one of our more regular larger bookings being lured away. You'll be delighted to know they've come straight back because of the excellent service and facilities. So very pleased about that. And the tenaciousness of our staff following it up, I would add to that. So the cafe for the final quarter of last financial year has been occupied by the registration service, who are on a sabbatical from the closed library. They've now gone back. So just to let you know that we are still going to continue at the moment until we're told otherwise with the cafe operating in the way that it is. We find it really useful for sort of on the hoof meetings as people come in, and we're also using it as a bookable space. It works really, really well around events to keep it as a cafe. On the weekend, it's going to be used as a cafe and energy cafe whilst we're all doing the Climate Film Festival. So, and that really just helps us move people around the building as well for events like the weddings. So it really does a good job of supporting some of those regular bookings. COVID-19, that's still on the update list. It might, I mean, I'm hoping it's the last time I really say anything about it. I'll stop talking about it after now, but suffice to say, the cleaners are just in the swing of the general, back to business cleaning, but the screens are staying up, signage is staying up, antibacterial gel is still out, and masks are going to remain available to those people who would like them, because that feels like it's the safest and fairest thing to do. Income forecast. So because this is the first one of this financial year, just to wrap up last financial year, the bookings ended up about £2,500 down from the budgeted income. So actually, I think considering the amount of times that we were shut, that's not too bad. I was expecting that to suggest that it was going to be nearer £6,000. So Nikki did her best to get those bookings in that last month. So that was quite good, which leads me to our projected income for this year. You could have absolutely bowled me over when I realised that we already have £45,000 worth of bookings in the booking system. And actually we did a very conservative budget this time, because at the time that we were putting the figures in for the budget, we'd just been sent home to work again. Working from home was a thing again. So we are really expecting to, much surpass the thing. We've got £45,000 worth of bookings in the system already. That means there's only another 5,000 to go before we meet this year's budgeted income. Hopefully we will well surpass that. Fabric of the building, we've had 3 really enormous projects going on, all of which are actually resilience projects, but because they come into the thing of fabric of the building, I'm just going to note that the 3-phase electricity has been brought into the building now to enable the new electric car charging points to work. So they are out there, it is all hooked up. We're just waiting for the booking system to come online before we start letting everybody know about that. And that will mean that users will be charged for it, and shouldn't mean that we need extra resource to service that. Similarly, solar panels are being installed as we speak. I sort of thought they might be finished today. They haven't quite. I think they're back again tomorrow. But solar panels are on the roof. Otherwise, we're just general maintenance is all scheduled in, as we'd expect, in order to keep the chamber in the tip-top condition. We're looking at the floor currently. That's the next thing on the list. I would say, I don't know, other members of staff would say Town Hall feels like it's really back to its pre-COVID self now. Look at this. This is like a real normal meeting. It's It feels like we really are now an all-round community offer. We're a hub of information, education, training, befriending, so all in the right direction. Challenge as ever remains to keep it looking its best.
Thank you, Rachel. Does anybody have any questions for Rachel? Anita?
Just an odd one, really, Rachel. I wondered if there would ever be any opportunity or any wish for us to take back registration of deaths and births and marriages that used to be at the town hall in days past. Are we ever likely to take that back from the library?
I don't think we're likely. I mean, if we're going to, now would be the time. In the shake-up of unitary, and we do keep asking, but as
Would there be any benefit to us in doing that?
I mean, it would be great. Oh,
Yeah, echoes Rachel enthusiasm, really. I mean, we had the registrars in here while the library was being refurbished, and it felt really good. It was really lovely, particularly for new parents with babies coming in and all that sort of stuff. It was lovely. It's sort of seeing across the hall what was going on. It seems to me the best place in the town for it to happen, as it always used to be. Some of the officers, the registrars that were there were quite enthusiastic. Other ones, I think, were looking forward to going back to their own little space in the library. But I think, as over time, I think we'll continue to offer that to them, because I think it'd be really nice to do. But at the moment, it doesn't appear to be on the cards.
although hashtag keep libraries special. It's
Mel, then Nick.
Rachel's not going to like this, I don't
no,
think.
that's fine.
Because we've always concentrated on the income. The more the building's used, then the more it's costing us. I wonder if we could sometime in the future actually give an estimate of expenditure so that we see how much surplus we're getting out of the building. Because that's what we were always trying to achieve to pay off the debt. But I don't want, loads and loads of work and reams of paper and number. But it would be quite good to know, wouldn't it?
It would. I strongly suspect my colleague Sarah does know, and will, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Rachel, I'm just interested in, you said you put solar panels are going up on the roof.
Yes.
How many? Are we getting feed-in tariff from them? And is there any plans to do any further renewables like air source heat pump, etc.?
Very good question, but actually, sadly, I'm reporting the sort of day-to-day nuts and bolts. It's Nikki Brain who's been working on the project, so she can report back on that. No.
If you create any excess, you'll pay that back through your electric company, and they'll give you, I think we get about 5p a unit, which is very expensive.
Paul has a comment on that.
I think it's a really important thing to know. So I'll get Nikki Brain to give you a rundown of what we expect, a bit more technical side. We'll send that out to all councillors. That we should be shouting about that kind of thing. Absolutely.
Any more questions for Rachel? Sheila?
This is my last meeting, but over the last few years, Rachel and I have met regularly to basically have a chat about how things were going and to between meetings, review what was going on and basically support it. I hopefully supported Rachel in that sort of process. Thanks for the back of my head. I just wanted to say what a pleasure it's been to work with Rachel. She's always incredibly conscientious at giving me information that I wanted, and very agreeable for me to meet up whenever we felt it was necessary. So thank you very much, and I'll miss that.
Yep, so say all of us. Anything more for Rachel? We don't have to vote on anything for this, do we? This was just for information. That's correct. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. What's been happening recently in the parks and green spaces? This would normally be done by Chris, but Paul's going to pull rank and do it.
Or pick up the pieces. Chris sends his apologies this evening. The update on the parks and green spaces. I think, Laura, have we got the the pretty pictures. What Chris does is goes through and says what's recently been completed, what's ongoing, and what's the plans for the future, and it's a summary to trigger any more detailed questions that we can give for him. So looking at the that isn't on that slide, but there's a lot of community engagement work being done at Eggford Lane Park at the moment. A lot of people were out there last weekend with inflatable goalposts, sort of working out where the best place to put them was. Lots of people having nice tea. I think you were out there as well, Mark, weren't you? Sort of having quite a nice time, I think. So that was good. Sort of the point there being emphasising that we're spending a lot of resources, time resources on engaging with the community, working out what they want and helping them deliver, as opposed to us just deciding what goes on and doing it ourselves. The Ranger team have been focusing heavily over the last couple of weeks on the Jubilee project at the Showfield. We've got a big stone up there, otherwise known as a boulder or a climbing boulder even, and paths and seating, and I think it's going to be a really beautiful addition to the Showfield. So I'm delighted that's going on. The tent is indicating the fact that we've got a couple of rough sleepers still. It's gone down from 3 to 2 this week. We realised that can't go on indefinitely. They're having one of the Dippy in particular is having quite a significant impact on local people, deterring them from using the Dippy, even though they're not in any way endangering people. It's just an uncomfortable feeling people are having. We met with the police today, Chris and I, and we've got a way forward that I'd rather not share in public, but I can afterwards. So for the general audience, it's a case of we have a plan that we plan to implement quite soon. As we mentioned before, the Showfield is getting a lot of love at the moment, and on the back of the play strategy and a few sort of coincidences coming to pass from members of the community and the Frome Collegians, we want to do quite an extensive review of where we are on the Showfield over the summer, with a view to sort of making some quite significant changes if that's what people want and if that's what people are suggesting. So that's kind of moving away from Eggford Lane towards more resources on the engagement side of the Showfield. Some of you noticed the grass is growing, lots of rangers' time being spent mowing it. For me, I think most importantly, the first ecological cut of the Dippy and Rodham Meadow has been done now, so part of our wildflower management regime. And not surprisingly, middle there, the tulips are looking good, and a lot of time of one ranger is spent at the moment making sure they are watered and continue to look good. Two final things on that. You'll hopefully, certainly Mark will be delighted that we're making some progress on Victoria Park at last. We've allocated one of the staff members to sort of focus on this project to try and one last heave and get it over the line. So progress is being made on that. Finally, oh yes, here we are. Any day now, the water will be turned on. I'm sure you'll be delighted to hear. Sorry we couldn't do that in this administration. That's a bit of an overstatement, but there you are. Any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you, Paul. As you mentioned, just for an update for councillors, I was at a meeting this morning with Viv and potential contractors. The Victoria Park toilets will eventually be renewed. I was hoping it was going to be renewed within the term of this council, but it's going to fall into the new one as well. But we've got another meeting on Friday with another contractor, so hopefully something will be happening on that. The budget's allocated to do that. What else was I going to say? I'll take a question from Sarah and then from Rob.
Question first. I've had a lot of questions lately about the cafe in Victoria Park, and I'm wondering what the situation is with that. It doesn't have regular opening times. There's a lot of people getting disappointed in holiday time, particularly because they saw it open yesterday at 12 o'clock, so they take their kid for a hot chocolate the next day at 12 o'clock and it's not open. Is there any pattern to that, and how can it be communicated better? And the second thing was just to say a massive well done to the Rangers at the moment, because keeping all the tulips looking the way they are has been no mean feat in these last few weeks of no rain, so massive well done to them.
Yes, Sarah, I certainly echo the second bit about the tulips. The cafe is an interesting one for us. We've had the same tenant in there for a long time now. And we have had conversations about, is it time to sort of shake that one, see if there's a better way of running it, see if that tenant would be interested in doing something slightly different, something more regular with the opening times. So we haven't got anything in play at the moment, but I'm beginning to think that it's time to have a look at that. So.
Have an opportunity to contribute to the meeting, because I looked at the agenda and thought, oh dear, there's nothing very much here, but the fountain, my favourite subject. Are we still paying £15,000 a year to maintain it? And if we are, why are we spending that much on it?
No, we're not paying £15,000 a year at the moment. That's that's because we're between contractors, and that's why it's turned off. We are talking to contractors, and as I said, any day now it will be turned on. We've identified a contractor that we want to work with. I personally don't know the cost of that at the moment. I don't know whether it is near 15,000 or significantly lower, but I can come back on you on that one. I just don't know. It's an expensive thing, and with the benefit of hindsight, would we have done it? I don't know. It's proven to be really hard to manage, and it is about the water quality and the very, very strict parameters that we have to work within on it's not a case of just diverting the leat and going over there and having a pump. Underneath it's quite a significant piece of engineering, and it's expensive. 15,000 a year, maybe not. But the technical side of it, we haven't got the rangers. The rangers haven't got the technical training and ability to really do that. And from a safety point of view, we feel we ought to be getting the professionals in to do it. But it's still going to cost every year, I think.
It's about the rangers. I thought the rangers were trained to actually assess the water and to go down into that cabin in the area. So I don't understand why we have to get contractors in as well as rangers doing the work.
We hope the rangers would be able to do it, and that there are monthly checks, quarterly checks, and annual checks. They can go down on the monthly basis and dip the water and make sure it's okay. It's the quarterly ones and the annual ones, as I understand it, that require quite a high level of technical skill that they haven't got. And Chris has looked at it and decided, actually, again, from a safety point of view, making sure we get professionals in to do it, it's less risk for us to do that than train up the rangers to do it. That's the sort of discussion he's been having with them about that, and with me. So that's the path that he's preferring to go down at the moment.
Mel had a question then, Nick.
Yes, it's just something to log, really. I think there was meant to be a Section 106 agreement between Rodden Meadow and the new eco houses that we were going to take on. There's quite a big wooded area there, and it's not being maintained by anybody. So if it's not us, it's the developer, and nothing's happening to it. Just wondered if we could get Chris to check whether that ever happened. That was definitely on the cards, because the developer didn't want that piece of land, and it was a good extension to Rodden Meadow. So it's to the right as you go up that path.
No, I know the answer. Purely coincidentally, I was talking about that with Chris today. We were talking about the whole piece of land between the path going up the hill, and that's all that surrounds, I think it's called the Cedars, isn't it? I don't know anything about the Section 106 agreement. I'm not sure where that is, but Chris can let us all know that. We have continually tried to get a deal with the guy that built the Cedars, and he's been willing, but the solicitors his solicitors aren't responding and haven't done for about 18 months now, despite Chris regularly contacting, there's just nothing coming back. And I asked Chris to write again, and we're going to hassle them on a more regular basis. It's a space that just seems a bit wasted to me, and I think it'd be really nice to be able to do something with it. And that includes going right down to the flat bit, you know, where the path comes down from Rodden Road down to the meadow, where the little garages at the end are. You know, either side of that, between our boundary and the path as well, there's an area, some of which are owned privately by the householders. And when we asked last time, they weren't interested in either selling it or gifting it to us. But I think we should ask again. And so that whole area, I think, we'll do a bit more pushing on that. But I don't know the answer to the Section 106 question.
Nick? Then Rich?
Yeah, just back to the fountain, I'm afraid, Paul. It'd be really handy to have an idea of the costs quite soon, because, of course, we've got the Boyle Cross seating and planters now in the final stage of the redesign. And I don't know if the figures of 15,000 as mentioned, actually, do they include the opportunity costs of the Rangers' time as well?
No.
That should be part of the factor, because, you know, it's a big deal. And, you know, if we're not counting that, that's probably going to double the amount of money that's spent. It'd be handy. Thanks very much.
I'll put some counts together from Chris and again, circulate it to everyone.
Rich?
Thanks. I'd just like to say, Chris, I've worked with Chris for now, 7 years. This is my last meeting. He does a pretty good job. He's particularly good at staying calm. Oh, all right, thank you. Teacher's voice has gone. Chris is pretty good at staying calm in difficult situations. He has to deal with a lot, so good on him. And as I said before, well done for writing risk assessments, because they're the most boring thing in the world to do and they take forever. And the only person who reads them mostly is the person who writes them, so well done for him. But I do actually have a question, and there was an article in The Guardian this week, I think it was. I put it around councillors, and Councillor Mark Dorrington made a robust defence of the police. Basically, it was saying that police often are interfering in the planning of parks and open spaces. I'm aware that they've got their ways and means and lots of good advice, and I know that Chris has taken that over the years. I just wondered if we've ever had any issues with our local police, you know, taking out seats or insisting that we can't do things.
Never. We've had positive discussions with the police. I can't remember the title of the police officer. It's something about urban design officer or something like that. We've had over the years 1 or 2 liaison with him, particularly around Chateau-Gontier Walk and things like that. And our experience has been very constructive, actually, as opposed to negative. Rachel, you've got something?
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that the police are always really, really supportive around events and make time to talk to us and look at applications. So, yeah, our experience.
I thought that was the case. I just wondered, because the Guardian article kind of made out like the police were being really difficult all over the country, but it's good to see. Thank you.
I'm glad you read my response. I certainly would describe it as a
robust... I could tell you'd had a certain job in the past.
12, 13 years ago. I wouldn't describe it as a robust response, but I thought I'd put another point to it, and you read my response to it. There is a case for designing out crime. Some of the examples they gave were ridiculous. But I think Steve knows better than I on planning. I don't think it's ever been raised as an issue. And I said, perhaps it should be. You know, perhaps we should look at design and think about, can we make this safer than it is at the moment? Ali, then Steve.
Hi, yeah, I mean, I've come across quite a few complaints recently about kids being harassed by older kids up at the park, and I don't know where they should actually go as parents of those children. And also, I would really agree with you, Mark. It's how can we work together in a kind of creative way? But it's definitely an issue, and children not going up there because they're frightened. So, what should I be telling them to do? I mean, they don't want to immediately ring the police, but we need a protocol. We need something also for us as a council to identify the number of those complaints.
Well, we're building in Steve's world, we're building in design about being sustainable. Should we build in safety? I mean, this lavatory block I've been looking at for the last few years, just placing the doors on a different side of the building would cut out a blind spot, a dark alley, somewhere where people would feel very unsafe to go. And I don't see that spoiling anybody's fun. You know, it's not it's not being unpleasant for the sake of it, but you are hopefully designing out a problem, which is what I was trying to defend in Rich's article. Steve, did you have something to say?
What I was going to say is the only thing we see on planning is planning out dark spaces, dark alleys and stuff like that. But as you know, the play areas that planners build is really a bit of waste ground with a wooden poling or something like that, and they call that a play area. So yeah, it's not really a big thing in planning at the moment. And perhaps it should be. Perhaps we should insist.
Yeah, go.
I think Ali's point is as important, that you know, if children and young people are feeling uncomfortable going to parks, then we ought to be doing something about that if we can. But the if we can side of that is a really hard one. I mean, if there's problems that parents or the children themselves are concerned about, then you know, recording that with the police is one way. And time again, when I talk to the police about, well, has that person reported it? Well, no. The more reports they get, the more routes they can get resources to cover on foot and keep higher presence. They will go where the biggest shouts are. So I just urge, one part of the solution is to urge anyone who's experiencing something other than being kind of taking the mickey out of them, or something, you know, something significant enough to call the police. They should call the police. And we try and build in through our engagement programs when we're doing new design and to try and bring together the people to make sure that we're designing schemes and providing services that people want. And that helps people feel more comfortable coming. Underlying that, though, it's an unfortunate thing where groups of children come together. There will be antisocial behaviour of some sort. And the bigger boys are chasing away the little boys. There's something that's same as it ever was about that. Doesn't make it okay, and it doesn't mean to say we don't try and do anything about it. But there is a certain level of cut and thrust in a play area that is never going to be designed away, never going to be taken away by police regularly patrolling. It's just a congregation of young people with sort of energy to spend.
Personal experience.
Well, being a bit of a wimp, I was on the bad side of the bullying, you know, and I just sort of feel for them. But it's a real thing, and a lot of young children know when not to go to the park, or if they see someone coming, they move on to another part of it, and that's a kind of, it's an infringement of what they should be allowed to do freely, but maybe they're risk averse and don't want to put themselves in that situation. My children have come home years ago and said, oh, I just came home because Big Johnny came down and I knew I'd get a punch if he was anywhere near me, sort of thing. You know, it doesn't make it okay, but the sensible thing to do is not put yourself in the firing line if you know not to. It's not the easiest message to put across, though.
Sheila.
I was just going to say that I think this has happened before, and was it last summer or maybe the summer before, that the police did go up, they put a camera up there by the skate park, and they even had a bus, I think, up there for a bit. So it's something that we know it has been dealt with before, and I believe was quite successful. Certainly, one of the things that happens up there is in the summer holidays, there's a lot of really loud music, and just because my mum lives in Longleat Court, you know, what's interesting is most of the people in Longleat Court do not want to report to the police because they think this is young people, we want to support them. But they do have a problem with a lot of noise. So I don't know whether there's something that we can preempt and actually do something that would actually just set the scene so that people do feel okay about reporting or about knowing what to do should something happen that they feel uncomfortable about. It's something we know will happen in the summer holidays. It's going to happen.
It's continuous, and it just waxes and wanes, doesn't it? And the message that we should be putting across, well, we are putting across loud and clear as often as possible, is to report it. Because if there is a disturbance going on, or the music is so loud it is disturbing, then the PCSOs patrolling that area would dampen it down again. Nick?
Thanks. I appreciate you probably want to move on from this, but it is an issue. I picked it up in my new ward almost, leafleting, and through some friends that there's a group of parents who've formed a little group to basically go into the park to escort their younger children through the park. I think what has always happened still happens, but it's exaggerated by social media use, so we get lots of stuff put out to sort of inflame the situation. But I think it's really important. I mean, police operate on intelligence, and there's either prevention or enforcement reaction, and we need to encourage people to report it online. Is probably the easiest way, because that wretched telephone number takes forever to answer. But I think there's an interesting role for councillors going forward, not just those of us with a law enforcement background, but others. I mean, I'm dealing with 2 incidents on wards that I've never worked on, which are where people living in Frome have been victims of one quite a serious offence, a high-powered rifle fired, or high-powered weapon used to fire through a window of a house, and another one, a series of criminal damages and threatening behaviour. And I think part of our role is to not necessarily hold the police to account, but to encourage people to report it and to be prepared to be present to support the constituents who feel sometimes a bit overwhelmed by it all.
Agreed. If it's not written down, it didn't happen. Sarah.
I just wanted to add something about it not just being about younger children and older children, it's also about girls and younger women and boys as well. And there's plenty of research done about how we make spaces safer for girls that so far I think that we've ignored. There's proven evidence about how to make spaces safer for girls, how to make them more social and safe and inviting and welcoming. And I think we need to look again at that in the next administration, about looking at how the park works for girls specifically, because they do use spaces differently, they feel differently about them, they feel differently about who's around them. I think that's an oversight, and I think we need to look at it.
I know that work has already started with one of our new councillors coming in, has already contacted the person you're referring to, and they're going to be talking about that. And we've certainly looked at that with design, a little bit of design I'm involved in at the park as well.
I'd push back a little bit. I don't think you're right in saying that nothing has been done. Well, you said nothing is. I think you did, actually.
We'll play the tape back.
I think there's 1 or 2 people in the town who shout very loudly about this. I think we are not perfect, but we're a hell of a lot better than most other councils. So we're in a much better place, I think, than a lot. And a lot of that safe place for girls is opinions. And I'm not convinced that actually it's the right thing to do all the time.
I would also push back a little bit and say there is evidence, there are studies, there are examples that show where girls are more able to use spaces that they weren't previously using because of a difference in design. I apologise for saying nothing has been done. Not enough, then, in my opinion, has been done, because I know that attitude is still there and girls still feel unsafe using spaces where there are larger groups of boys. We're talking teenage girls here. We're not talking about little kids.
Okay, have we finished with this part of the agenda?
Yes.
Are you sure? Right. The next part would have been Chris, but again is going to be Paul. Management and improvement plans for New Road, North Parade, Pack Saddle and the Roundhouse. So specific open spaces that need managing.
So particularly for the newer councillors, this is something that we put on ice for a little while we commissioned and reflected on the publication of the play strategy. So now we're coming back with the regular annual or once every 2-year reviews of our management plans of individual sites. They're designed, as you can see, actually, Laura, can you go forward just to an example of one of them on the screen, please? Yeah, that's it. They're designed to be very simple, very accessible, and relatively high level. A lot of our sites, particularly the smaller ones, are actually quite simple, quite small, but the idea, as you can see by the sort of the various sort of titles on the sections, you know, there's a bit of a technical summary on the middle of the right-hand side there. There is information below that, but this is, again, as Chris has designed them, so anyone can pick them up and relatively easy to understand them, as opposed to going into too much detail about, you know, sort of data around biodiversity, for example. So this is a group, the first, getting back on track following the play strategy. This is a group of 4 smaller sites. New Road, North Parade, Pack Saddle, and specifically the area of the Roundhouse. I think I would just sort of, you've had them all already. I think I'd probably just sort of say, is there any questions on any of the 4 at this stage? I don't know if you want Laura to sort of push. I can go into more detail, no problem at all. It's just that there is a lot, and just wanted to focus on what you're particularly interested in.
I think what I'd like to say is I really like the way that our green spaces are managed differently. So that it's not one size fits all for all of our green spaces, but different people can have a different favourite green space in the town. And it's either the one that's closest to them, that they feel they own, or it's the one that fits their needs. So I noticed, for example, on the New Road one, that it's particularly good for toddlers. So you might find that people from further afield particularly go to New Road because it fits their family as it is at the moment, whereas other people might come further away to come to Dippy because they particularly like the management of that. And I really do appreciate that. I like the way that we do that, that every green space has a different management plan.
Thanks, Anne. Any further on these specifics? Andy? Then Tracy?
Thanks. You mentioned about how accessible this information is, and in terms of the layout and, you know, readability of it, I think it's great. I talked probably on my first visit to this town hall, I talked about the idea of maybe creating a QR code on site at each of these places that would then give access to this, so that somebody can just wave their mobile phone over a sign and this is what pops up on their mobile phone or other device. And I'd like to see if we can progress that.
Yes, we'll take that forward, Andy. Yeah. See, I mean, meaning we'll explore whether it's possible. Yeah.
We've had that with various things around the town with grants, from what I can remember, where people have looked at we had it on the Singers Trail, didn't we? When people walked around on Singers and they could look up at something, it told them what it was. So it's definitely doable now. People in the town with the expertise to do it. Tracy, welcome.
I was pretty much going to ask that really, and say whether it's possible you could be at one site and you could scan a QR and tell you about the others. As you're saying, some are more photography friendly. Oh, yeah.
So yeah.
I'd say that I was pretty much the same thing, but that you would be able to, if you were at one site, to be able to know about the others. I just wondered, you couldn't just put the page back to Pack Saddle for a moment, could you? Just for my selfish update.
Thank you. Rich, did you have something?
I'm here, I think. Yep, got me.
There you are.
Yeah, 2 things. One, just looking back, you know, however long it is, the last 10 years or so, all of these spaces at one time were kind of underused. They all of them, I would guess, have more people using them now than they used to have, and that's down to this council and the rangers and the management of those spaces. So I think that's a really good thing, and I think that they all although they're all very different, they all have a common feel about them. That it's obvious that they're run by, they're looked after by the same organisation. So that's commendable. And I'd just like to make that point that, you know, I think what we do is generally really good. And I think it would be nice perhaps to have some figures on that, on usage perhaps at some time, without spending officers' time too much. But it would be nice to have some feedback on what people think going forward. And I've forgotten my last point. I can't remember what it was going to be. Oh yeah, information boards. There was talk about having information boards at Rod Meadow, and I know with my Friends of the River Froome hat on that we were willing to kind of sponsor that slightly. So let's not lose sight of that. Some nice picture information boards going forward would be really good. And Rachel's obviously on that already.
Yeah,
Cool.
it is on our list.
Right, yeah.
Steve?
It's sort of a little bit from left field, but in terms of the green spaces and these were the stuff that we've seen come to, you know, being built, often they have these attenuation ponds, and most of the ones in Froome are pretty dire from what I can see. But I've been in Beckington and Road for the last few days, and they really make a good job of them. They're all manicured and mowed and sort of actually a real community space. And I'm just wondering if there's an angle there to talk to I guess what would be the management companies that now run these estates, because the developers have long since gone there counting their cash. But whether it's a chance to sort of talk to the management companies and the community groups that are set up and work with us to actually turn some of these, what basically are almost bits of wasteland, quite frankly, into something that's quite usable. And it would actually be a really cheap way of doing it, I'd have thought.
So we've discussed this at planning, haven't we? We're going to build you a nature reserve. And in fact, they had to because it's just runoff. And it's a fetid swamp after a couple of weeks.
It's a wasteland, isn't it?
Yeah, so we do need to keep on top of that, I know. Anything else on this topic? Okay.
So what we've got here are 4 management plans, and then they're really quite detailed by design, looking at it's a comprehensive, as Rich mentioned earlier. Chris has to spend a lot of time on risk assessments. So each site has a risk assessment that is reviewed every year, and that is the other half of these that has been recommended for approval. So there are 4 plans and 4 risk assessments. Is that right? Am I saying the right thing there? Yes.
Four here.
Yes, more or less. Yeah. So that's what's on the table.
Yes, so
Proposal.
right, so I'm not going to read all those out. You can read those, but we have to approve this by vote. Does anybody have any questions on? Yeah, okay. Rob, being the greenest of us all, will propose it. Anita will second it, and we will vote on it. And already I think it's unanimous.
That's unanimous.
And prompt. Moving on, we have the delights of the staff handbook, and that's in the hand of Laura.
Laura has spent a long time
Glory
going
there.
through this. Give her a bit of a credit.
He will be heard.
I only just wanted to say that it's just really good that we're up to date and we're doing all the right things we should be doing, so thanks.
I don't know. You're also going to talk about expenses.
Do we need to just approve this?
Oh, sorry, we have to approve this, do we? Okay.
Proposer.
And Sarah.
That
Unanimous.
unanimous. Just to say what, as Laura said in that report, we have an agreement with HR legal advisors called Ellis Whittam, and they do this for us again, similar to the fountain example, getting the professionals in to make sure that we are compliant. And it actually it's not that expensive from, I'm not sure exactly how much it is, 2,500 a year, but that ensures that for all of our staff, we're doing the right thing by them, and similarly by the council, because it's a two-way relationship, isn't it? So I'll stop wittering now.
Oh, we have questions. Anita, then Andy.
Understand why someone like NALC perhaps doesn't produce a staff handbook that can be used throughout all councils across the country and for free. Shouldn't they have the responsibility for keeping it up to date, which would avoid the costs for us?
They don't.
I would assume that they don't have the HR expertise. This is to do with employment law. So it's obviously to make sure that our staff are protected as well as the town council. So I think it's something we need to have quite a high level overview of. And I'm not sure NALC have that.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Laura. I just wonder if it's something we can raise with NALC for the future, that maybe they should be in charge of it.
Good point. Andy?
I was just going to say that £2.5 grand is peanuts, and hopefully there's nobody from that company listening in and trying to round it up. But for the head count that we have, and for what that would cover off, it's peanuts. That's a really good deal.
Thank you. Right, we've already voted on that, haven't we? So don't need to go back. Agenda item 7 is a decision, approval of staff expenses policy. There have been some minor tweaks to that, which Laura will walk us through.
Yeah, so Hannah can't be here, but she was the one that reviewed the staff expenses policy. So she just wanted to say that there was minimal changes. We used the rates set by HMRC for mileage claims and subsistence. The staff travel and expense form has been amended, and it is now an Excel document rather than a Word document. Therefore, calculations are automatically calculated to minimise the risk of error. And also, Hannah is signed up to the HMRC's newsletter, so she'll be notified if there are any rate changes in the future.
Yeah, and I've had a conversation with a couple of councillors now about councillors' expenses incurred. And I suggest, as a matter of course, that the expenses that staff are eligible for are also eligible for councillors to draw down. So in that situation, just come to Sarah or me and we'll authorise them, so long as you're not fleecing the company.
Anne?
I was just going to ask about with the very, very high fuel costs at the moment, what is the rate that HMRC is allowing? Is it still 45 pence a mile? Because I'm not sure that that's enough anymore.
Yeah, I think it is. I haven't changed it yet.
So action to just see whether that is the one that's being recommended by HMRC.
It is. We've looked.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood what you said, Sarah.
Okay.
And I think in law, someone can claim even more than the HMRC if they can prove that that's costing them more. So I think we do have to review how much we're spending. I don't think we can just rely on using the HMRC rate, because they might take years to update it, and we might be severely underpaying people for expenses incurred.
So Sarah and I'll have a look at that.
It's interesting to look at the expenses policy. I went through it with Paul yesterday. It starts with walking, and by the time you end up claiming something, you've had to go travel quite a bit of distance beyond Frome, really, to not use not use a bus or a train or something. So it's it does need looking at. But yes, you're right. It is pitiful. Okay, so we need to. Are you proposing or questioning? Question or answer? Go ahead.
Two things, really. You talked, Paul, about the potential for that offer to go out to councillors. Is that something that would be written to all councillors, or would we be expected to ask, as and when the need arises, for the details from the handbook or something?
When we get to the induction evening next week, I'll put some more fat on that bone.
And the second part of the question really is, I know I don't know if this has been raised before, but certainly within the, since we've had a new group of councillors meeting, there has been discussion about the policy around expenses to cover childcare for meetings. Can we just go through some clarity on that very quickly?
I'd rather do that behind closed doors, if that's okay, for various reasons. It's a bit of a legal minefield.
Is it? Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, in that case, thank you for the update on expenses. Laura, is there a recommendation to go on? There it is. So we need to approve this policy. Rich is proposing that, Sheila's seconding it, and we're unanimous.
We are unanimous.
Please speak up if anybody wants to object or abstain to any of this. Now, Sarah's going to explain our financial position.
Yep, thanks to Hannah for writing this report. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight. She's got a slight whiplash injury, but she just couldn't be here tonight. She has written some notes for me. The internal auditors are in tomorrow to finish off the year-end report, but they did do to the end of January already, and everything was satisfactory. There was one asset to dispose of. It was the bench that was vandalised in Victoria Park, so that's on the recommendations. The income highlights include the Salix interest-free loan for the LED replacements in the town hall and the solar panels, and Froome Lions Club donations for Ukraine appeal. They raised 3,750. Also, Terry Pitts crowdfunded for the community fridge, which I think everyone knows about. Expenditure highlights were the Sustrans, one of the Sustrans bill for school streets, the Froome Festival grant of 10,000, Town Hall roof works of 8,000, and first 50% deposit for the finger posts for town. We'll publish more detailed information on the year-end position in May. But just to say a couple of things, there is a budget in for Boyles Cross maintenance again at 15,000, although we were well underspent this year, and there is also a budget in for the marketplace, which is a new budget code. The Ellis Whittam bill, by the way, also covers not just the staff handbook, but all the staff contracts. That's it.
Any questions for Sarah on our finances? Okay. So so you can see the recommendations that we have to approve here if we decide to approve them. Have a quick read of that, and somebody proposed that we accept that. Sarah is proposing, Nick is seconding, and we are unanimous.
We are.
Laura's going to tell us about joiners and leavers. No, she's not. I've got staff updates. No, sorry, I've jumped one. Anxious here. Go ahead, Rachel.
Thanks. Communications update. There's been quite a lot in this report. It's a bumper report. March is already traditionally our biggest time. And we've also had to squeeze in an additional PB vote to make sure we've got something to do, for the Jubilee. The moving, the reframing of Discover Froome, the shaping of the Jubilee project itself, and the Twin Town refugee appeal have also been thrown into the mix. So we've been quite busy, and hence the report. I'm not going to go through it all. You'll be pleased to hear. But Froome community channels, since Council Matters, we've posted about 67 releases. So please, look at them, read them, inwardly digest them. Across the board, most of our traffic does come to our website via our prolific social media channels. So although sometimes it doesn't look like we're getting much traction, we are getting a lot of through traffic. So that has been really heartening. This March, we saw a 50% more traffic in the website. We are putting that down purely to the Ukrainian appeal. So, that's sort of bittersweet. It's a shame we've had to do it, but I'm glad it's being effective. And that Rabka appeal has really seemed to have captured the imagination of Froome. The £45,000 has been raised so far, which is amazing. From everything from fantastic art shows and brilliant gig at the weekends. All sorts of things have been happening to raise that money, so that's really good. The campaign, of course, is not just about raising funds, but also trying to support people who want to help in other ways, such as donating time or clothes, or supporting those to help host. And across the staff team, we've all sort of been involved in trying to support the emergence of Frome welcomes refugees. So that's seemed like a really, good use of time. What else have we been? Election pages, Jubilee, street parties, all of those pages have been continually updated. This has been a really busy period for that, of course, whilst everything's been going on. Annual town meeting and the civic award winners, that all always takes up a lot of time, but always gets a lot of love. So it's always really worth making sure that's out in the world. And we've been looking for, where we don't feel we've been quite as effective, a change of tone around healthy home surgeries and the energy cafes. And actually that looks like it made a real difference last time. So it's good to be able to see some positive changes there, which has been really good. Discover Frome, moving on slightly, that has received 28,000 visitors since we last reported. So that was beginning of February, with 58,000 page views. Interestingly, the traffic you will have seen in the report is mainly coming from London at the moment. So whether that's good or bad, I don't know. It certainly means that we've got lots of, as a visitor off the site, I'm quite pleased with that. But people from Frome are the third biggest amount of people, so it's still serving really well. Walks, buses, all of the things that we hope to do, and of course the local events. And why Frome page is up there when you Google Still Beating Wikipedia, which also makes us very happy. On the Discover Frome side of the timetable, we're also delighted to note that our guided walks group, which was a Discover Frome project, are now moving on to branch out as their own CIC. So they're still going to be offering the same amount, but not quite so supported by the Town Hall, and also in conjunction with Frome Society for Local Studies. So that feels like a really good result. Events-wise, since reporting, we've hosted a number of events. We've supported the Kindness Festival, Window Wonderland, had amazing community windows, obviously. We've delivered Frome Bus in conjunction with the college, which has been again a really nice, slightly reframing the event and moving on that. That felt like a really nice matching, really, and as well as supporting Make It Happen. As I said, we've also delivered 2 people's budget votes, so that was a bit of a tight squeeze. So people's budget Jubilee vote, as we heard earlier about the Stone Circle, and we are looking forward to a celebration event that will follow on the 2nd of June, now being devised, so we're working hard on that. And the events vote. So People's Budget events will bring this back to another meeting, I'm sure. Although the events that have come out seem 4 really excellent, good, robust events, it has to be said it hasn't appeared to capture the imagination of the town in the amount of people who are voting. So we definitely need to look at that in a different way, although all of Year 8s did vote, and that part is really, really heartening because they really enjoy that at the youth conference. So I guess a work in progress. Looking forward, in conclusion, really, we are looking at, we've got the film festival on the weekend, which there's a partnership project. Green Breather Days are nearly in our sights. Jubilee project, as I said, is well underway. Climate Action Group next week on the 11th. That's being done in conjunction with Green and Healthy team, and we're also working with them to promote their July conference. So a bumper start to this financial year and this year's work programme. I'm not sure, there's quite a lot in there, so obviously any questions about anything, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Rachel. A very full report. Does anybody have any questions for Rachel about Rachel and Anita?
Busy, as always. One question really, and I may be totally wrong in my thinking on this, but I seem to recollect somewhere along the line that we may well have passed over Discover Froome to the Black Swan to manage. Is that right, or do we still manage it?
No, we still manage it. We are doing a project with them, Discover Froome Makers, and I think this will come back to a Town Matters meeting, if I'm right. But but what has happened is the information point has moved into the Round Tower, sorry, and rather than having it just as our space, it's a shared space with Black Swan. And we got some money to deliver Discover Froome Makers, which is a way, similar to the way that we highlight other businesses in town. It's looking at makers as businesses and trying to support them as they slowly emerge.
Good. That's good to hear. Thank you.
Rich, then Mel.
Thanks as ever, Rachel, for all that work. Fantastic. Are we doing too much sometimes?
Yes.
You know, maybe
Yeah.
put foot down a bit sometimes and say, can't do it. Which I know you do that anyway, but it was a tiny, stupid little comment, really, in everything that you do. Well, at the start, on the website, you go on the Froome Town website, which is great now because George has done all that work.
Amazing.
I was talking to somebody the other day, and they didn't realise if you scroll down, you get all the news and everything else. So they only see those sort of 6 boxes or whatever. Now, you do get to it in other ways, obviously, but I just wondered if there was anything you could do to say there's news underneath here if you scroll down. I don't know how you do that, but just a small point to think about.
Okay. I'll certainly have a look at that. Yeah.
I mean, that's a fantastic report and full of lots of details, and I couldn't imagine we'd get to this point when we started this, so that's great. Just a couple of things that I'd like us to consider. One, and it sounds like it's a bit of a Luddite, but I wonder whether or not we need to be telling people a little bit more about what this council does, but on paper, whether it's through the Froome Times, and I know that you get lots of stuff in there, but something that we put in to go with the Froome Times in a way that actually says this is what we've done. Because I speak to a lot of people, and I guess many of you do as well, and they'll say, well, I'm not quite sure, what do you do? And people who are quite savvy as well. So that's the kind of first thing. And because the numbers on the London people really struck me.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, oh no, that's bad.
Yeah.
Because we're telling more to people outside of the town than we are people internally.
Oh no,
I know it's, but, and I guess the more important point is we've got 12 months before the new Somerset Council comes into existence. I think we should be raising people's expectations across the town on what they think they're going to get from Somerset County. And we shouldn't be just saying, this is what these people are telling us we're going to get. We should be saying, this is what we expect as a town, and maybe this is what we demand. And so part of the site might be about what's happening, who's making what decisions, where are we in comparison to other people? So it's more of a campaigning role than we've ever done. So it's not Independence for Froome, it's the Town Council trying to make sure that it gets its fair share of what's happening with Somerset County. Because we're not going to get another chance like this. And once they get started and it becomes established, we ain't going to be able to change it. So I wonder whether we should be thinking about how do we beef this side up. And I don't know what the answer is, but how do we do it? And where do we go from here? And from tomorrow, there'll be a shadow council in effect running. And so we need to be picking it up fairly quickly.
There's, in the next week or so, let's sort of come together with a group of staff and a group of councillors and just sort of drill down a bit on that. Rachel, I know it's time anyway to review the comm strategy. And it's a good time to be looking at our comms at the beginning of a new administration, especially with the unitary coming up. So let's pull together a smallish group of interested people and sort of just throw it about a bit.
back on a little point earlier, I reckon if you took out all the articles in the Frome Times that were written by Frome Town Council, there wouldn't be very much left.
No.
So maybe that's something that we need to make people aware that that's, happening in some sort of way. Anyway, well done.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Trace, I couldn't see that.
Yeah, just to say that what Mel just said is really interesting place to sort of start with something like that, and I'd like to just chuck my hat in the ring as being part of that group if possible.
Okay, we'll look at that next week. Are we done with Rachel under this heading? I think we are. So Laura, tell us about the leavers and joiners.
As usual, not a huge amount to say, just to say farewell to Veronica, the climate action researcher. But we've already recruited for her replacement and they're doing a handover next week. And on the bright side, we get to keep Nikki Cox a little bit longer. And as always, we are keeping up to date with all of our training as a staff body.
Is there anybody who's got any comments on staff issues? No, thank you. And
Sorry.
oh, there we go. Go on, Anne.
Something came up with amongst the new body of councillors about our councillor access to training, and who funds it. Do Frome Town Council fund it fully? So if there is a training course that you let us know about, is it like a first come, first served, or do we have a certain number of places on training courses?
No, we seem to handle them in the same way that we do staff. So often we've got obviously now courses, SALT courses. So yeah, just come to me if you want to do them. Often they've got lots of places. So I've never had an oversubscription of councillors wanting to do one training, but obviously we could cross that bridge if we ever came to it. So yeah, just if you're interested in doing anything, then just bring it up with me. Yeah, so I'm hoping that SALC, which is the Somerset Association of Local Councils, do some really great introductions for the brand new councillors. So I'm hoping to get a lot of people on those in the coming months.
And those SALC ones are really, I was going to say really cheap, but they're really good value. And increasingly they're online, and they're about an hour or two, and then they're just, why wouldn't you want to do that as a new councillor or an existing councillor? The more bespoke training is on a case-by-case basis, but I think, Sarah, I'm right, in the combined staff and councillor training budget was underspent at year end. So at the moment, I think, it's a personal development thing as well as performing as a councillor or member of staff well. So I'd be asking myself, well, why wouldn't we want to pay for that as opposed to the other way around? So if there's any, particularly the councillor training that's organised, and the conferences that NALC and other people run, just Laura's increasingly pushing those out to all councillors, and they're worth a quick look as opposed to just deleting, which is the usual instinct. Not Anne, I'm sure she wouldn't do that. But yeah, have a look at them because I think they're worth looking at.
Thank you. Anything else on this topic? Which brings us to the final, no means the least, the health and safety update, which Paul will present on behalf of Chris.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything. It's there. Any questions? It's pretty standard stuff.
Does anybody have any comments that are healthy and safe? No? Thank you for that. So I think that's the end of tonight's business.
Can I just say, because it's the last meeting,
I was going to...
from the staff's point of view, to the councillors, it's been an odd 3 years, but to slight understatement probably. Not with the councillors, just the circumstance we've been dealt. But I'd just like to thank you for all your free time that you put into this. I mean, the staff get paid; it's our job to do this, but you do it voluntarily, and we value that. So thank you.
Can we
I was just going to say that on our behalf. I hope if I could be so bold. So thanks to Paul, Peter, the managers, the officers. This is going to sound like the Oscars, because you're not getting prizes. Paul, Peter, managers, officers, rangers, cleaners, stewards, and all the other staff who work for the council who've helped us over the last 3 years and helped us to do the business of the council. As of Friday, 9 of us will be different, and we've got an awful lot of challenges coming in this first year, if not for the next 5 years, but also a lot of opportunities, so let's hope we're ready for that. We've all met the new people so far, and everyone seems to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and up for the challenge, so that's going to be quite interesting, and there's a lot of work to be done. But I don't want to forget the work that's been done over the last 3 years by this council. It should have been 4 years, until we were thrown a bit of a curveball at Christmas and told we're going to be all up for election again. Don't forget that 3 years ago, 13 of us had never done this job before. 4 of us had some experience. I had a year's experience. Some of them had 4 years' experience, but there was not a lot of experience going into the beginning of the new council, as was 3 years ago. And I think people have met the challenge. And we were hit with COVID. We were hit with organising volunteers for the town, organising food parcels, running around, whilst also trying to keep a council going. And I think those of you who've served in this council have done should take a pat on the back for that. I'm not blowing us up, but it was very difficult for very inexperienced people to do that job on behalf of the town. So that's my thoughts on it. So thank you. And see you in the new world on Friday.